Okay, we're going to talk about vocabulary this week, and next week we'll talk about morphology because it kind of connects to reading comprehension. So just to keep this week's content a little shorter, we're just going to focus on vocabulary. So let me move this out of our way. Okay, so according to the Michigan Department of Education literacy standards, vocabulary is an oral and written language construct that is central to everyday and academic language and involves general and discipline-specific vocabulary. So we're going to talk more about what each of those means in just a few minutes. So knowledge of word meanings and the conceptual knowledge that underlies them. It includes understanding multiple meanings across contexts, figurative language, and morphological structure of words. It is central to oral language, academic language, and reading comprehension, and written comprehension. So this is what vocabulary is. So when you're doing your literacy construct resource guide, this is the definition that you would provide for vocabulary. Now we're going to talk about how it develops. It develops through oral and written language exposure, inquiry, experiences, and explicit and implicit instruction. So including explicit instruction in word meanings, vocabulary strategies, and some of those strategies are like looking for a possible synonym in the sentence. We use context clues a lot. And deliberate analysis of the morphemic composition of words. And so next week we'll get more into what morphemes are, or morphology is. So remember, previously, a few weeks ago, we talked about morphemes being the smallest unit of sound that carries meaning. And so if we're thinking about vocabulary, it would make sense that we would be thinking about morphology, because we want to know that each piece of a word carries meaning, right? So we would want to use that to take words down and help us understand them. And so this is really important for all students, but particularly students with dyslexia, reading difficulties, and those who are multilingual learners. So one of the things I want you to do a couple of times as you're listening to this, I'm going to have you pause the recording, and I actually want you to reflect and really think about these questions. Reflect on the activities you experienced in school when you were learning new vocabulary. I want you to think about the kinds of tasks, the games, or the lessons that helped you actually understand and use new words. And then I want you to think about the ones that felt less effective. And then I want you to think about how those experiences will shape the way that you approach vocabulary instruction in your future classroom. So one of the things that this makes me think about in my time as, in PK6 education, when I think about the activities that help me learn vocabulary, or more importantly, the ones that felt less effective, it was the ones where we just looked them up in a dictionary. So we had the words that were in bold in our textbook, and we either used a glossary or a dictionary, and we just looked them up. And we wrote the definitions. Sure, that can be somewhat helpful, but it didn't really, it didn't help me that much because I ended up having to memorize what they meant, where I'm more of a visual learner. So any opportunity for me to draw it or draw something that I think relates to it, would have helped me remember. So I would say those were less effective. I can't honestly remember a vocabulary activity that I thought was really useful or beneficial or helpful until I actually started teaching. And when I started teaching, I found some that were really useful and beneficial for students. So pause the recording here and take a few minutes to just reflect on your own experiences, and then think about how your experiences are going to impact the way that you teach in your future classroom. So our textbook talks about the fact that vocabulary knowledge and reading achievement are closely related. That students with larger vocabularies are more capable readers, and they know more strategies for figuring out the meanings of unfamiliar words than less capable readers do. And we want to think about why that is. So what do more capable readers do? They tend to read more. The more that we read, the more vocabulary we encounter, the bigger our vocabulary becomes. Less capable readers spend less time reading, so they have less access to vocabulary. And so they obviously are going to struggle with building their vocabulary knowledge. So I'm going to show a video, and it's going to introduce you to these words down here, okay? And so I want you to be thinking about what each of these words means. So you can pause the recording here and kind of take a minute to write these down. And I know this seems silly, but if you really just stop and kind of write these down, because it's going to make sense to you in just a minute, but just write a few of them down. If you don't want to write all, 8 of them down, that's fine. Write a few of them down, and try to figure out what they mean in the context of the story that you're about to watch. Okay, so I'm going to open this up on YouTube, and hopefully I can toggle back and forth pretty easily. We shall see.
Vocabulary matters for all students. I want you to read the following passage. It's written at a grade 3 reading level and contains 100 words. Today in our science brief, we will learn about the dringos of the troca. The troca is made of many dringos of Ypezuk. The outer dringo is called the phonobert. Below the phonobert is a dringo of extremely hot, almost solid Ypezuk called the blingwoody. Under that dringo is troca's zilfib. The outer zilfib is a combination of liquid iron and nickel, but the inner zilfib is solid metal. Hot molten Ypezuk, called sinapuk, will sometimes burst through the troca's surface in the form of a retinia. When sinapuk comes out of the troca, it is called dizkuk. Were you able to decode this passage with at least some fluency? Were you able to make sense of this passage? If so, what context clues helped you to make sense of this passage? Did your understanding of English sentence structure help you in any way? Did your background knowledge help you to figure out the gist of the passage and what it was describing? How might visuals have helped you to better understand this text? What about if accompanying translated key words were provided?
So this is a really great place for you to stop and then compare. Like, were you able to figure out what each of these words were, or were there some that you could discern because of the context of the story?
Even with only 9 unknown words, this passage was still really difficult to comprehend. Even having the text read aloud to you probably didn't make much of a difference to your comprehension. Some of the research states that students need to understand the meaning of 98% of the words that they read. If they don't understand what they're reading, this leads to disengagement. Students might be able to decode the words, but if they're not understanding what they're reading, we've already lost them. All teachers, regardless of what subject they teach, are teachers of language, and all students are learning academic vocabulary and language structures. The supports we put into place for our multilingual language learners will benefit all students.
Okay, let me see if I can exit out of here and toggle back. Okay, so I wonder how you did with your vocabulary words. I feel like this activity is a really great activity to kind of help you see how important context clues are, but also how important vocabulary is to our reading comprehension. So our students that are struggling with vocabulary, reading is going to be incredibly difficult for them, and they're going to have a hard time connecting to the passage. They're going to have a difficult time connecting to the story and what's happening if they can't make sense of the words that are being used and don't have a strong vocabulary background. So now we're going to talk about the different kinds of vocabulary. So there's academic vocabulary and general vocabulary. And I want you to stop here and think about what academic vocabulary is. I want you to kind of jot down a little definition, how would you explain academic vocabulary and how would you explain general vocabulary? So pause the video here and just jot down what you think academic vocabulary is and general vocabulary. And once you've done that, what I'd really like you to do is on that same piece of notepad, paper, journal, whatever you're using, I want you to generate a list of 10 academic vocabulary words. And so if we think about academic vocabulary let's start with general vocabulary. General vocabulary are the words that we use in conversation every day. And so they would be words like bus and breakfast and house and dog and things that we would use every single day or in casual conversation. Academic vocabulary is tied to academics. So think about that in terms of like content areas. What are some vocabulary words that we would use in math and in English and in literacy and in science and social studies? What are academic vocabulary words we would use in music, physical education, art? So the content areas have academic vocabulary embedded in them. And they're not always words that we would use in everyday conversation. Sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're not. They're words that are specific to a particular topic area. So I want you to stop here and just jot down 10 academic vocabulary words. Think about math, think about science, social studies. What are words associated with those content areas that you would consider academic vocabulary? So once you have those 10 words written down, you can hit play again, and we'll move on to the next slide, which is an example. So I want you to see if any of the words that you used look like these. So in the primary grades, words like character and graph, minus, pattern, pledge, sentence, vote, those would be considered academic vocabulary. In the middle grades, you can see bias, colonial, idiom, justify, parasite, praise, semicolon. So you can see which words would be kind of associated with English, like semicolon, idiom, which ones would be associated with social studies, maybe colonial and bias and justify, and which ones would be associated with science, maybe parasite and prey. And then in the upper grades, you could take a look at these words and kind of figure out which academic area they are in. So apartheid would be in social studies, biome might be in science, irony would be in English. So you can kind of see where these academic vocabulary will show up. So there's 3 tiers of words. There's basic words, which is your general vocabulary. These are words that are commonly used in conversation. They're informal. You'll hear them at home, in the grocery store, and on the playground. And then there's academic vocabulary, and these words have wide application in school and are used more frequently in written than in oral language. And they're usually related to content like math, ELA, science, social studies, art, music, gym, things like that. Then there's the third tier of words is specialized terms. And these are technical words, they're content specific, and they're often abstract. So we don't use them that often. So an example of a specialized term that I would use when I was in doctoral school, there were 2 words that really I struggled with a lot, and one was ontology, and the other one was epistemology. And I could not for the life of me remember what either of those words meant, but I encountered them frequently, so I always had to go and look them up. Those are specialized terms. I don't use those in everyday language or even in academic language. They're very specialized terms, and they're related to theories and research. So that's an example of like a specialized term. So this is another activity where I'm going to have you pause and do some work. Okay, so get your notepads out and be ready. During a 5th grade unit on America in the 20th century, students encountered the following words. And so I want you to read through each of these words. And when you're done doing that, I want you to create a list of examples of basic vocabulary words, academic vocabulary words, and specialized vocabulary words. So remember, this is a 5th grade unit, and it's a 5th grade social studies unit. So make a column of basic vocabulary, a column of academic vocabulary, and a column of specialized vocabulary. So hit pause and make those lists now. Okay, so how did you do? Tier 1 words, you might have listed guitar, harmonica, worries, nightmare, unfair, celebrate. I mean, these are words that we would use pretty regularly, or, they're kind of common. Most people know what they mean. The tier 2 words, which are academic words, maybe you had ordinary, spirit, desperate, original, sorrow, tragedy. They're a little higher level words, and they are often found in academic areas, the content areas. And then the tier 3 words that are specific to social studies, you might have noticed it, might have listed drought, dust bowl, stock market, Great Depression, unions, unsanitary. And so these aren't, there are many different words. You could potentially move drought up to a tier 2 word. To me, it seems more like a tier 2 word. Unions could be a tier 2. Although, when you think about the actual unit that these 5th graders were studying, unions make sense in terms of talking about stock market, Great Depression, and the Dust Bowl. So, okay, so we're gonna watch another video. This one is vocabulary in action. So give me just a second to get this open up on YouTube.
Read-alouds involving child-friendly explanations of words within the text and revisiting of those words after reading build children's vocabulary knowledge. In this classroom, the teacher is going to focus on vocabulary during and after a read-aloud.
Today I'm going to read the story Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. I really liked this book because there were many challenging words that I thought my students might not understand. So I went ahead and chose several words and gave child-friendly explanations, and I put that on the back of the book. So as I'm reading the book, I have the page number already noted and the definition already ready. We do read-alouds every day, and so a vocabulary-focused read-aloud is an excellent way to introduce words to students that they'll find in literature and nonfiction texts that they may not otherwise hear. Today we're going to read Sylvester and the Magic Pebble by William Steig, and we're going to talk about some special words today as we go along, and then we're going to do some activities. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. On a rainy Saturday during vacation, he found a quite extraordinary one. Extraordinary means special or very unusual. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, remarkable is another way to say unusual or very special, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. To his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop gradually, as rain usually does. It ceased, which means stopped. The drops vanished on the way down. The clouds disappeared. Everything was dry, and the sun was shining as if the rain had never existed. I choose words that I feel will challenge my students and they may not understand in regular comprehension. I use child-friendly definitions, not dictionary definitions, that are quick and precise and focused for my children. "I wish I were a rock," he said, and he became a rock. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around it, and went away confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. All of those words means he did not understand. I give child-friendly explanations throughout the book because there are many words that the students might not understand and that can interfere with their comprehension of the text. So I feel that if I can give them a quick definition and then move on, I'm giving them that window to understand the text. All the dogs in Oatsdale went searching for him. They sniffed behind every rock and tree and blade of grass, into every nook, nook is a little corner, and gully, gully means a ditch in the ground, of the neighborhood and beyond, but found not a scent of him. They sniffed the rock on Strawberry Hill, but it smelled like a rock. It didn't smell like Sylvester. After I read the book, I like to focus on 3 to 6 words that I want to work with the children on afterward and give explicit instruction on. I really liked how in this book there were a lot of synonyms. So for instance, remarkable and extraordinary were in the book, and they both meant very special. So we spent a lot of time with that, with the picture sort. I like to have the students repeat the word often. We also look at the word and the different parts of the word so they can understand the meaning. Another word we had was remarkable. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, It's another way to say that it's extra special or very unusual. Can you say remarkable? Remark means to comment on something. You notice something. So for something to be remarkable, that means it's so special or unusual that it's worth talking about or commenting about. So we're going to put these words up here. You say remarkable again for me? All right, so let's take a look. I have some pictures here. Abby, you said ordinary just meant?
Plain.
Like plain. Okay, so we're going to put that here. Not very special, right? But if it's, what word is this? Or that is really special or unusual. So I have some pictures, and you're going to help me decide whether they are ordinary or extraordinary and remarkable. Okay? So let's take a look. I have a bowl of rice here. Anything special about it, or would you say it's ordinary? Which one? Who would like to raise their hand and answer for me?
Because a bowl of rice isn't exciting. It's just like food that you're about to eat.
So you would call it which one of these?
Ordinary.
Would you like to come up and put it under ordinary for us? Okay. All right, now I have another bowl of rice. You ready to see this one? Look at this bowl of rice. What can you tell me about this one?
It's extraordinary.
And why do you think it's extraordinary?
Because it's not like just a bowl of rice. It's actually like making a living creature.
So they almost made like art out of it. You would call that which one?
Remarkable.
Remarkable. Can you put this under remarkable for us? The more activities that I give them to do afterward as far as sorting or actions physically, it gives a lasting impact for them to remember those words. I should have listened to this paragraph again, and I want you to think about the lion and why the author used these words. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around it, and went away confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. I saw that little donkey as clear as day. Maybe I'm going crazy, he muttered. So we're looking at these 4 words. Can you say bewildered?
Bewildered.
Perplexed? Puzzled? And confused. So they all are synonyms again, and they mean the same thing. Can someone tell me what you think those words mean? Lexi?
They mean like you really don't know what's going on.
You do not understand, right? You do not know what's going on. It's an excellent book for vocabulary because there are words that have synonyms with the same meaning, and we can teach one definition and have multiple words that mean that, and that gives students multiple ways to express themselves using a variety of words. There are a lot of opportunities in this book with sophisticated vocabulary words that I know that my students have not had exposure to. So I want you to imagine that you are really, really hungry, okay? Show me, I want you, without any sounds, can you show me what it would look like to be really, really hungry? Oh, I'm seeing some unhappy faces. Some of you almost look like you're in pain. Now, all of a sudden, you see a table full of fruit, delicious fruit. Show me what that looks like. All right, ooh, I see some wide eyes. And you're going to go reach for the watermelon. Poof, it turned into a rock. Let me see the look on your face. You were about to eat it. What do you notice now? I see some eyebrows raising. Oh my goodness, some of you look really perplexed. You look very confused right now, Lexi. What are you so confused about?
Because it's not usually ordinary to have when you're holding a fruit and it just turns into a rock.
Okay, so can you imagine how that lion felt? Can you imagine that? So, listen, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do first, okay? In a minute, I'm going to have you stand up, and I'm going to name a feeling. And I remember we've been talking in reading class a lot about the gestures we make with our bodies, our facial expressions, and our voice, right? So you get to be the actors and actresses right now. I'm going to name a feeling, and I want you to show me what that looks like and sounds like using all of those things, okay? So stand up. Okay, show me what happy looks like and sounds like. All right, what about confused? Yep, I see some more eyebrows. You don't know what's happening. You're not understanding what's happening. Okay, how about sad? Let's go over our words one more time that we learned, and how many of you think you might notice this in your reading? Or how many of you might try to use these words in your writing? I'm thinking about all the poetry we've been writing. What do you think? We've been talking about precise words. How many of you think you might use some of these words in your poetry? Okay, so we have extraordinary, remarkable, bewildered, perplexed, puzzled, and confused. There's a definite growth that I noticed using Read It Louds for vocabulary instruction. I hope that they'll use those words in their everyday talk, in their classroom, use it in their writing, and then when they come across those words again in other texts, they will understand the meaning of the text.
Learn more.
Okay, so she does a really nice job explaining how to, that's an excellent example of a vocabulary lesson. And one of the things I did when I was teaching first grade is I did very similar things as to what she is doing. Anytime we came across words like synonyms, I created a word wall on the wall. And so underneath the word big, there would be giant, massive, gargantuan. So anytime we encountered a word that meant the same as big, but it was more expressive, then we would add that to our list. And so that's another way that's another way that you can build students' vocabulary, and they can look around the room and see those words. And then when they're talking or telling stories and they would say something like the word big, I would say, ooh, you could say big, or you could say gargantuan or massive. And so you can build that vocabulary in a variety of ways, not just when you're reading stories. Okay, so this is the reflection part. So here's what I want to tell you. If you made it all the way through this week's video, you will do two things for me. One, if you would email me your reflection, why is it important to teach vocabulary? I want you to answer that and email it to me, along with a picture, a picture of the words that you created. So that list of 10 academic words. So let me go back for a second. So that list right here. So where you were required to create a list of words. No, wait, let me go back more. Sorry. Here, the list of 10 academic vocabulary words. I want you to actually take a picture of the 10 academic vocabulary words that you wrote down before you saw this list and before you learned about the different tiers. I want you to take a picture of that list of words and submit that with your written reflection. Email that to me. Email me the photo. Email me your reflection on why it's important to teach vocabulary. And then you can earn 10 extra credit points. So you get 10 extra credit points for watching the entire video all the way to the end, and for submitting your reflection and a picture of the list of 10 words, so that I know that you've engaged with the content of this this lecture for this week. So, all right, I look forward to getting some emails from people.